The financial system as we know it is really broken. In 2005, I started as a leverage finance banker, and shortly 2.5 years later, that was the financial crisis.
The worst day.
Fall of Lehman Brothers really froze the credit markets.
43% completely wiped out.
A lot of people got hurt. It didn't feel right. It felt like, did I really go through all that schooling and education just so I can be supporting this sort of imperfect system?
Were you open to the concept of Bitcoin? Like, it made sense to you?
2016 was when I first put my money to work. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. For me, it was very clear that Web3 and crypto would be the future of finance. So I decided to take the leap of faith.
What does a day in the life look like as a CEO of a crypto exchange?
Crypto exchanges are 24/7. So most of my job is actually 24/7. It's hard work. You're constantly grinding because that's the only way you can truly make a positive impact.
Nenter, dude, welcome to the Chinsandy Show, bro. It's good to have you here. How you been, man? How's the week been? As we're filming this, right? It's Consensus Hong Kong. Yeah, what's up, man?
Yeah, no, well, first, thanks for having me here, man. I know we were talking about doing this for a while, so really glad to be here. So far, so good. I mean, Consensus has been very busy. I've been in town for 4.5 days, and it's just been nonstop, a lot of action. But it was good. You get to see a lot of partners, a lot of, folks you really need to catch up with around the world. But, you can sort of jam it into just a couple of days of meetings. But definitely ready for the week to be over.
Yeah, same. I'm definitely not doing anything tomorrow. Taking a break. But Nander, I would love to start this. And I was just really curious. And I think a lot of my audience is really curious. What does a day in the life look like as a CEO of a crypto exchange? I'm just curious. Like, do you look at the charts all day, or what do you do?
Yeah, I'll tell you honestly, it's, crypto exchanges are 24/7. So most of my job is actually 24/7. So working through the weekdays, the weekends, it's for the most part, definitely, it's a grind for the most part, but very rewarding at the same time. So about 50% of the year, I am on the road, going to various countries and regions to work with partners, looking at potential collaborations, speaking to different regulatory bodies, exploring different frontier markets, and speaking and meeting with different industry folks at the various conferences. While that's happening, I'm probably, I would say most of the time, even when I am on the road, very much connected to our global decentralized team. BitMart's been around for almost 8 years. I think it's 8 years as of March 15th. And, we've grown to about 500 employees globally. And, so for myself, I have a lot of communication on a day-to-day basis with my direct reports, a lot of internal work as well. So that's why lots of times I always have my headset on a conference call. Internally, really have to, review a lot of different initiatives, see which strategic paths to take, see what's working, what's not. User growth is obviously a very important part of an exchange success. So looking at that, understanding sort of which new products should be we should be building or improving upon. So it's really quite a handful. I would say it requires a lot of different disciplinaries. One day I may be looking at a potential acquisition target with my CFO. Another day I may be customer support. So it really sort of
never a dull day, I guess, right? Everything is always changing. And
absolutely. As we know, crypto, it moves at lightning speed. And I feel that not even, hour by hour, I think there's always something that comes up that needs immediate attention. So there's always there's never a shortage of things to do.
Especially in crypto. Yes, working in crypto. And do you have like a routine that you do every day that kind of gets you ready to tackle things? I know some people wake up. I interviewed one CEO She says she wake up 4:30 a.m. Yeah, do you have something that you always do every day to kind of prepare yourself for the day and stuff?
Absolutely. Look, I believe strong body is very important and it keeps the mind clear. So I typically wake up around 6:30 a.m.
Wow.
Start with my morning workout routine. And in terms of intake, I try to keep it to, fresh vegetables, juice and such, proteins. And, that really helps me sort of energize for the day. I can, as I'm on the treadmill, I can, really think and sort through what I need to prioritize and get done throughout. And, that's certainly part of the routine, whether or not I'm on the road or at home, I tend to keep that routine.
Do you do that also when you're traveling? Like kind of.
I do.
Wow.
I do.
Okay.
It's definitely important. A big part of it too is not just the exercise, but also, stretching, hitting the sauna, just making a blend of these different activities. There's certain places that are more optimized for indoor workouts versus, being able to, have a nice jog outside or, go for a swim. But at a minimum, I try to at least exercise once a day. Sometimes it's quite global. So sometimes I may have daytime calls and then I'll have to kind of push that out later on in the day, but I'll try to at least make sure it gets done before
Nighttime. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. And I'm just curious, Nenter, like growing up, right? Your upbringing, like, did you always wanted to run a company? Did you always see yourself like running a global company and stuff like that? Or were you, how was Nenter like growing up and stuff?
Well, growing up, I think similar to a lot of Asian children with had very similar upbringings. Well, yeah, I mean, my dad was an engineer. He always wanted my sister and I to focus on our studies. And, I think for Asian parents, it's always science and mathematics. So there was a big focus there. I really didn't know what I wanted to do until probably later on in life, probably around high school, going into university. During that time, I was a little bit, I think it was Wall Street was the first one that I had watched with Michael Douglas and
yes.
Charlie Sheen. And then there were a lot of these movies at the time that sort of really made Wall Street very sexy. So I thought, okay, that's something that could be interesting. And for myself, I've always excelled in math and those topics. I had to study quite a bit growing up.
Were you a good student? Did you get good grades?
I was a pretty good student. I spent a lot of time also learning the Chinese language on the weekends, like similar to a lot of
Saturdays, Sundays. Yeah.
Right. Just because growing up in the US, my parents were afraid I was going to lose touch with the Chinese culture and the language. So that was one thing that my parents had always wanted my sister and I to never lose, and which I'm very grateful for. At the time, I wasn't because, I was very much into video games, my Super Nintendo and, playing Street Fighter, into the PlayStation era. I was, I always wanted to have more time to play video games, but so I sort of had to balance that out. School was definitely priority for me. But, when I went to university and I attended Ann Arbor's Ross School of Business.
Oh, nice.
That's sort
Michigan.
of Michigan, yeah.
Wolverines, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm still a huge Wolverine fan.
Although this season wasn't.
I know. It's a shame I haven't had a chance to visit for many years now. But, there I attended business school and I really thought, okay, well, finance seems pretty interesting. And, subsequently when I had graduated, I went through the typical investment banker route. I started as a leverage finance banker in New York on Wall Street. I started in 2005, and shortly 2.5 years later, that was the financial crisis. I still remember walking into 383 Madison that morning. This was when I was at Bear Stearns, which subsequently was acquired by JP Morgan, that they had the $2 bill posted on the glass door because it was $2 a share. They had announced it the night before at fire sale. And, those are crazy times, but it was really through the financial crisis and that I learned, wow, there's, the financial system as we know it is really broken, right? It's there were a lot of issues with the way things worked, and it really was not what was glorified in the movies. A lot of people got hurt. A lot of normal people got hurt, and it didn't feel right. It felt like did I really go through all that schooling and education and such just so I can be supporting this sort of imperfect system? And that started, and subsequently I started to look into a lot of other different areas. I mean, while being in, still being a banker, I remember looking at how faulty the current global fiat monetary system was, and it was around then that I started buying a lot of gold. And unfortunately, when Bitcoin started, I didn't pay too much attention.
Yeah.
I had friends in China and in South Korea that were already starting to, wow, we have to mine this thing.
What year was that?
That was like 2012, around 2012.
And you were still, so during the financial crisis, you were working for Bear Stearns, right?
Yeah.
And then how was that like working during that time, during the recession in 2008? Like, because that's how Bitcoin started, right?
That's when it started. I didn't get involved, or I heard about it, obviously, but I didn't really pay much attention to it until probably around 2012 when I was out in Shanghai. But, working during the financial crisis was certainly an experience. I think a lot of folks were used to the good days on Wall Street. So, working through the bear market really sort of builds your resilience. You just have to be sharper than everyone else. So I think it really helped round out my skills overall in the financial services world. Yeah. But, moving forward to when I discovered Bitcoin, didn't get involved. Guys were already, and a lot of them were, poker players that had sort of, back then you had to receive payment in coin. And so obviously they had a lot of it. And, to me, it was just, okay, is this going to stick around or not? I don't know. But
were you open to the concept of Bitcoin and stuff like that during that time? Like, it made sense to you? Or were you like, I don't know, yeah.
It did make sense. It's just there was a lot going on at the time. I was stationed out in Shanghai trying to help global bank sort of build out its Asia Pacific business. So back then too, it was a lot of traveling, a lot of, the work certainly kept me very busy, and I had an Asia Pacific global team reporting into me. So there were certainly not as hectic and busy as it is now, but I would say comparable in a different way.
Yeah.
2016 was when I first put my money to work. I remember it was around the ICO days, right? So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, those were the three that I had, put some money into it, forgot about it. And 10 years later, I'm still holding it I'm still holding the same from then. Obviously, have increased over time, my holdings. But at the time, it was really more just, okay, well, if you believe in the thesis of owning gold, then why not this asset class? And that I did believe. From 2016 on, I started to explore a bit. I had started to have more friends get into it. I started looking at some of these earlier DeFi projects, threw a little bit of money here and there, like small angel checks, nothing too crazy. And it really wasn't until DeFi summer that I started getting really involved. And I read a lot of white papers, testing out the various protocols, putting my own money to work and really moving assets on chain. And it was really exciting. I was like, wow, the asymmetrical upside here is actually, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And
were you still working in TradFi? Didn't have like traditional finance?
I was still working in TradFi. And, funny enough, this was around the time when COVID hit too.
Oh,
so at the time I was running a sales and trading desk, and a lot of the volume, a lot of the flow had really sort of been subdued due to the market. And I was still out in New York. So I probably had a year and a half of working from home. So most of us did not return to the office given the policies in New York. And, it did allow me to have more free time to really dive into it. And over that period, I noticed that my interest sort of completely shifted towards the crypto side. And, and I think towards the end of DeFi, I remember my wife had asked me to, borrow some ETH. And I was like, you know what this is?
How did she hear about like crypto and all that? Yeah.
Well, interesting enough, right? So she, she was before we were married, she was a fashion designer, and but she also, she went to UAL in London, and she had a lot of friends that were on the art side, and some had ventured into digital art. And she had, through her friends, discovered NFTs. And so that's how I discovered NFTs. And
interesting. So she, the one that brought you to NFTs, you're the one that brought her to crypto,
right,
and stuff like that.
Exactly. And she never fully got into crypto full time, but she introduced me because she wanted to purchase NFTs.
What did she want to purchase?
Oh, everything. I mean, back then you had, everything from, minting cool cats to, Bored Apes to like, I forgot, like the anime one. And Damien Hirst had his collection, Murakami. So we literally, during that summer, we probably purchased just about anything you can think of that came out during that period, the art blocks of the world.
What made it your wife collect NFTs? Like, what was so lucrative about it?
I think it just culturally resonated with her.
Yeah.
And, her friends it wasn't really for anything financial.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
It wasn't financial. And back then, some of these mints, it really didn't really cost that much. I think ETH was only around like 2,000 at the time. So a lot of these were just very much community driven. And I believe that, so that, to me, that was the real onboarding of the masses in crypto.
Yeah. Yeah. That was crazy. Like during that era, right, of crypto, like you said, like the apes and stuff like that. Yeah, that was just crazy. Everyone we had celebrities repping it, right, as their PFPs and all that. So when you were in New York, right, you mentioned that you were in Shanghai doing some stuff. Like, so I was just curious, like, I mean, a lot of people, right, they maybe kind of scared moving to a different country even, or just getting used to those things. Like, how was that like move, like going from New York to being in Shanghai and stuff like that?
Well, back then, I call it the heydays of Shanghai because that was probably one of the, the best times. There were a lot of expatriates that had moved over to sort of develop their international business. In a way, it reminded me of what Dubai felt like over the last 3 years, where everyone from Europe, North America, everyone sort of moved over to try to, build up their business and capture a share of the market. And I think that was around the time when sort of, folks were trying to diversify into other global markets just because of what happened in the US. And, similarly for investment banks, definitely different, much more raw than Wall Street in New York, where everything was already, it's been around for a while, established. And, but I thought it was a very good experience, being that lots of times I would have to visit, for example, paint factories, right? Large, for example, PPG is one of the largest, Fortune 500 publicly listed industrial coatings companies, and one of my clients out there. So, visiting their factory in Jinan, which is up north, very cold. That was the first time I had an excessive amount of baijiu. So that was very memorable. But I was really able to, see a lot of different cities, a lot of the auto manufacturers, right? They had set up in Chongqing. That's when they built out their China factories. So I had a lot of visits over there for our clients. So really different experience, but very valuable.
How did you even get the opportunity to go to Shanghai?
Well, I think I was one of the youngest that were promoted at the time by Mitsubishi to help run that business. And, I was very fortunate that, I did, quite well there. So they wanted to give me a chance. And also, I think from just being able to relate culturally too, I think that also helped.
Yeah. So how's your Mandarin? Was it really good there, or did you have
我国语
struggle?
还可以。
Okay.
我其实现在在一个 predominantly 中国的交易所 it improved quite a bit. So
Yeah.
I speak Mandarin quite frequently to my team.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been sort of diversifying the employee base to have more folks in, coming from different regions. The last couple of hires I had made were across Europe, across the US.
So then you get into NFTs with your wife for collecting, which is actually rare. Like there's a lot of flippers and stuff like that. That's really cool. And then how'd you like end up taking that leap from working from TradFi to Web3 and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, it really happened by chance because one of my friends happened to be a longtime employee of Animoca and came into town. One conversation led to the next. I learned that they were starting their venture investment arm and needed someone with a TradFi background and investing background to support that effort. So, decided for a little while and thought, okay, well, if I already am so into crypto, and keep in mind, I think one of the main reasons why I believe in crypto or Web3, it's the ethos behind it, right? And the philosophy behind it. Because as I mentioned, TradFi is designed so the very few can benefit. And I mean, even when you look at financial literacy levels across many jurisdictions in the world, it's very low. You're not taught personal finance, even in the US. I mean, in a place like Shanghai, I think financial literacy is very high. And I think
Interesting.
that it has the highest financial literacy density in the world. I think children starting from the age of 8 or 9.
They learn finance, their finance class.
Personal finance, yes. So
Interesting.
understanding how to manage their own money, interest rates, etc. And, that I think that's very important because lots of incorrect financial decisions are made because most people do not have that concept growing up. I think for crypto, the mission has always been creating a more fair monetary system, right? That, to sort of hedge against the debasement of global fiat currency. And then subsequently, I thought, okay, well, which is the better mission, and to this day, I still believe that being in this industry as an exchange or VC, ultimately, the core mission should really be to help build a stronger and more equitable society by having people hold Bitcoin to really hedge against their local currency debasement and inflation. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these frontier markets, whether or not you're in the Philippines or Argentina, right? They've gone through decades of this, and this is sort of the only solution. So for me, it was very clear that Web3 and crypto would be the future of finance. And so I decided to take the leap of faith and moved to Hong Kong to work for Animoca's venture fund. And it was a great experience because that was in 2022, and that marked my official full-time transition into a crypto role. And that was, right after I had joined, interestingly enough, that's when FTX happened. So we immediately hit the bear market.
Wow.
But, I'm very, in a way, I felt very fortunate to have joined during the bear market because during the bull market, you had crazy valuations, anything goes. It was just everyone was really investing based on momentum, hype, and, when you can exit via a TGE liquidity event. Being in the bear market, probably on a weekly basis, probably looked at about 24 potential investments a week.
Wow.
So the volume was pretty heavy, but nevertheless, I think it helped me learn a lot because I was able to effectively look at every subsegment of the crypto or the Web3 industry, right? And really able to formulate a view and sort of see the pros and the cons and sort of what works and what does not. And, having gone through that for, a couple of years, I think it certainly sharpens my skills as an investor and have a better understanding of the market itself.
And I was just curious, how are you able to continue to improve yourself, continue to grow in roles and stuff like that? Yeah. Improve yourself in kind of opportunities and stuff.
Well, I think you really have to be self-motivated to learn, especially in our industry. Crypto, as it is today, right? There's a lot of resources, but versus in 2016, back then you really had to dig yourself. You had to speak to different people. Back then, I got involved with different communities via Discord. I had picked up a lot of knowledge through friends of mine that some of whom I haven't even met in real life before. I'm very thankful for those relationships because it allowed me, back then, it was really about trying to gather as much knowledge as possible. And to the extent, I think today it's the same thing. So I believe you constantly have to be learning new information. The market moves at a lightning speed. There's new product developments on a daily basis, right? So you really have to have that intellectual curiosity to continue to learn, continue to sort of adapt with the market and see through sort of the facade and the hype and understand sort of the core drivers, the real value add and how you can kind of contribute to it as an individual.
I think that curiosity is something I find like in a lot of traits for founders, builders, leaders, is that they always are curious about what's next. They're never like satisfied, right? Even think about like NVIDIA CEO, right? So, someone to think, and Jensen, like he's always like curious about new things, new technology, AI and stuff like that. And I feel like sometimes people just don't have that. They're like kind of complacent, right? And they get stuck in their job or get stuck because they're just not willing to step out their comfort zone,
right?
And stuff like that, which is like, yeah, it's crazy. But also like there's something that doesn't get talked as much, I feel like, but is as important. Not just being curious, being good at your job, but also like how about like the soft skills, like developing that, like how do you communicate with people, how you communicate with your customers, your clients, internal teams, like how are you been able to develop that from in college, studying to working in New York, investment banking, investment finance to like now?
Yeah, I think that is some, have the sort of the interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
I think that's something that it just naturally occurred throughout time. Even though I was working in New York and Shanghai, for the most part, the clients and the different partners and stakeholders I had to deal with, for the most part, were very global. So, and I think it's, really being able to understand sort of, different cultures, different mindsets, and, how different people operate. I think that's very important. Being able to sort of look at things from not just your own view and perspective, but also from theirs. Because, it's very easy to sort of have your own worldview and stick to it. But I think being able to be open, I think that really sets up a much better way to develop relationships with individuals.
Yeah. Again, I think the reason I asked that because I think a lot of people, they may have the skills, right? They may have, like that, but like they just don't know how to communicate. Especially the younger generation, like a lot of people in my audience, like, is there a way people can develop better interpersonal skills? Is just going out more or, how do you advise someone to?
I do, like you said, right? I think a lot of the younger generation tends to communicate more via social networks, online, and behind the screen. I definitely think being out there, in real life, that's very helpful. I tend to, one of the things I like to do most is really not to only attend conferences and meet with potential business partners and such, but join some of the parties, some of the developer activities, right? Really just get a broader view of what everyone's doing, different market participants. I think it really can broaden the perspective a lot. And you make a lot of good friends along the way. Being more open, being out there more, I think is very helpful.
Yeah. Also, I'm curious, like, it seems like kind of your career trajectories definitely always have gone up, right? You've done well in your career and stuff like that. And I was just curious, like, has there been like times where it's just like, you don't want to do this anymore, you want to do something else? Or like you've always been, said, I want to work in finance and stuff?
Well, I have to say, I've been very fortunate that I've enjoyed everything that I've done, because if I didn't enjoy the work, then I wouldn't be here. And the reason why I shifted out of TradFi was because I realized that I enjoy the Web3 crypto side much more. And, because for me, I tend to, uh, in terms of work-life balance, it's more blended for me because I would say I think about work 24/7. It's sort fully integrated into my life. So for me, it's enjoyable, which is why I've never had an issue with this type of schedule.
Yeah, the passion for it, and it's something that, yeah, you just want to do, right? And that's something that, again, we see that in a lot of the successful founders, CEOs, and stuff like that. But again, some people sometimes they just don't find the passion,
Right.
and how would you advise someone to, I guess, like find their passion and stuff like that, if there is?
I definitely think understanding yourself and what you're not just sort of what you're good at, but how, people can be good at a lot of different things, but can you really, for me, that answer was very clear. But I think it's really understanding your skill sets, where you want to be, having sort of short, medium, longer term plans and views of, and views and trajectories of where you think you should be. And, testing out different paths.
Different paths and stuff like that. Yeah. Trial and error, and also curiosity, right? Learning from that.
Yeah. And I think definitely, spending the time to really dedicate a good amount of time, right? Not just, okay, I think I could be good at this, let's give it a try, but spend some time to understand it a little bit better. And, that'll save a lot of wasted time later on down the road.
Yeah. Do you read a lot of books?
I do.
Okay.
I try to be more efficient these days. So I try to listen to the audiobook versions.
Nice.
That way I can work out at the same time.
Big fan of audiobooks and stuff like that. Like, again, I run a podcast that obviously I'm audio, but when you're working out, right? When you're like on the plane, I'm sure, traveling,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's hard to like just focus in reading, but listening, you're walking to somewhere. What kind of audio stuff have you been listening to?
I think podcasts are pretty informative. Sometimes if I miss what's happening over a day or two, it's very easy as a quick summary. And then I can sort of, then delve into the areas that I feel are more relevant to what I need to do, and then dive into that research a little bit more. So podcasts, I think, have certainly been much more helpful. Occasionally, I'll have books that others will recommend, and I have a pretty long list to sort through. But there's going to be others where I sort of, if I see it in a bookstore, I'll try to purchase the Audible version.
Okay, so going back to kind of your career, your path and background, right? So you start working for Animoca, you moved to Hong Kong, right?
Yep.
How do you go from that to now where you are now as the global CEO of BitMart? Like, yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah. So, as a venture investor, I think a huge part of the job is to not only make the investment decision into a certain project, but also you have to help them along the way. And, the one thing that I discovered was that I wanted to get much more involved and get my hands dirty, but I just didn't have the operational capacity to do so. At most, right? How much time can you really spend when you have so many other investments to sort through and then manage the portfolio? So you really can't get that deep into the help. And it made me realize that in order to truly make a difference, you need to be in that position to be able to directly drive that change. And I think to me, that was something I thought about throughout my time there. When the opportunity came to run BitMart, I thought it was a great opportunity for me to really, take the skills that I've developed over the last, 20 years and apply that to helping BitMart in its expansion phase. And, that way I can, be in the driver's seat and really drive that strategic growth without having to focus on anything else. And I think for myself, I've always believed in the sort of obviously in retrospect is very easy to validate now, but only really a few finance related categories have really had that true product market fit, and exchanges being one of them.
Yeah.
So to me, I wanted to really make a difference. And that's why I decided that this was the
Yeah.
right role for me.
Yeah. So how do you even become like that? Do people just hit you up? Do you apply on LinkedIn, or how does that work? I'm always curious.
I had discussions with the founder of BitMart, for a bit of time before, making that final decision. And it's, fortunately for me, I think, for me, it's all about, integrity. I think that's, when, crypto, it's for the most part, and financial services, right? And in finance, integrity is key. And, finding, working with those that have that integrity for me is first and foremost. So, that combined with, other factors made me realize, okay, this is the right transition and the right time to do so.
What do you think is like kind of like a misconception of being a CEO? Because I think a lot of people think about, especially of a crypto exchange, right? Managing a lot of money and stuff. People just think you just drive Lambos all day. You like live in mansions. Like, yeah, I mean, is that true? I mean, I'm sure it's true for some people, right? But like, yeah, what do you think is like a kind of misconception of being a CEO of a company?
I can't really speak for the others, but I think for myself, it's really, it's hard work. I think there's a lot of work involved. You're constantly grinding. There's an endless amount of things to do, and you really have to be on top of a lot of different categories at the same time. You really need to enjoy your work and have that passion like we were just talking about earlier, because that's the only way you can truly make a positive impact. And, the travel, sort of the external and internal workload is definitely a lot more than, you can imagine. You have to be able to manage your time very well. And ultimately, when you do, it's a very rewarding process, because when you see those, the campaigns and the initiatives actually come into fruition, that certainly motivates you to want to do more.
Do more and stuff like that. It's not a 9-to-5 job, right?
Oh, no. It's
24/7.
24/7.
Yeah, that is crazy, but that is cool. I mean, what is something you've been learning? Because you're pretty new, right? For BitMart, right? As Global CEO, about almost a year now, right? Yeah. What are some things you've been learning about, like even yourself and managing? Now you said 500 global employees and stuff like that.
New things I've learned on the exchange side. I've looked at a lot of different exchanges and sort of worked with them in different capacities. But I think holistically, I have a much better understanding of how things work, what drives growth, retention, and really trying to understand what the users ultimately want, right? Understanding that behavioral pattern. And I think I've significantly improved on that front. It's being able to measure, being able to anticipate, I think, as well, is also something that's a big improvement.
Yeah. I also, when I was talking to another CEO of an NFT project, actually, that we probably know, and she was telling me how, like, also balancing, day-to-day operations, right? Managing partners and stuff, and also being on crypto Twitter. How often, I'm curious, like, how often are you on crypto Twitter? Is that beneficial to you guys, or how does that work? Yeah.
I'll look through Twitter from time to time. We have a very good social media team that will sort of manage our company accounts.
Yeah.
For my own, I of course, I think it's very relevant to, get an understanding of the current sort of sentiment and what's happening, right? So I think you always, to a certain extent, need to be monitoring Twitter. So lots of times and my wife is probably not too happy about this, I tend to scroll Twitter sometimes when we're having a meal.
Oh, no.
And that's sort of become a secondary reflex for me. But I think it's important, but I also try not, you do have to limit your time on it, because you can, it could be endless scrolling, and there's just a lot of information out there. It's not correct. And everyone is optimizing for that short-term engagement. You have to sort of, be able to vet through that very carefully.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned like how like one of your roles, right, is to see what the users want, obviously running a crypto exchange. Besides crypto Twitter, I'm just curious, like, how do you know what users want? Like, what kind of research? Do surveys? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, surveys. I think exchanges like ourselves and our competitors, very data-driven. You can see from campaigns and sort of the back-end data in addition to surveys based on their behavior and sort of, how they answer and respond, and also the success and failure of certain pilot campaigns as well.
Yeah, yeah. I guess so. Campaigns like kind of promotions, stuff like that, to bring people,
Yeah.
kind of users and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like traveling a lot? You said 50%, right?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Okay.
I think the key there is to really be efficient, because there's always some level of work that has to be done. But I think it's certainly part of the job. I think I don't mind it, but I would just need to have more. I would say it's been, even before the global CEO role, I had to travel pretty extensively for the venture partner role at Animoca. And before that, in TradFi, I had to travel quite a bit to see my clients across the globe. So it's something that's sort of embedded into sort of my work routine. So I'm, fairly okay with it.
Yeah, yeah. Are there times where now representing a company is different from, I guess before, but like in things you say, you gotta watch out because every little thing you get people in a microscope or put it in a news article or something like that. Like, is that difficult in a way, or?
I don't find that difficult, just because for myself, it's transparency is key. And I think, integrity, transparency, I think as long as you're sort of operating under that guidance, I don't really see too many issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a great crypto exchange that people want to use? Because I'm curious, there's so many out there, right? And, it's like, how do you even capture like people's attentions, mind share and stuff like that?
Well, that's an excellent question, because different exchanges excel in different areas, and you don't have to be great at everything, but you have to have at least one or two reasons why someone want to trade on your exchange. And I believe the current market is somewhat saturated, right? So I do believe there's going to be continued consolidation. I think there's just no need for hundreds of exchanges. When you look at CoinGecko, the list goes on. So I do think some that are not adequately capitalized, I think they will probably fall away naturally. Others with some value, they may be acquired. But for the most part, you really, it's product. I think, the standard deviation between one product versus another at a different exchange is really compressing a single digit percentage. So it comes down to, okay, do you have, let's say, an esoteric asset or one that you can't really trade everywhere else? And can you provide sort of the potential upside via leverage, right? Or do you have a better earn product that lets the user feel safe, yet you're earning a better reward? So, for finance related companies, a lot of it comes down to yield. It comes down to, do you have, lower fees, right? But again, the product offering itself has to be visibly competitive. Understanding your end user is very important. Having that strong community tie, I think that's also very important. That's why I always emphasize the community aspect, because ultimately we're all humans. Everyone is bound and want to feel like they're a part of something, and being able to, tie your users to your community, to your brand, to the company, I think that's a very important part as well. In addition to the sort of hard requirements, which are the products, the yields, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always very interesting to hear from like behind the background of crypto exchanges, because obviously we just see a lot and then, okay, this token, this and this exchange, and so let's go there and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, just the process behind it, psychology even, like of what users want and how to be competitive in the market, right? And man, Nenter, it's been an amazing conversation, but I have two more questions I want to ask you.
Of course.
The first one, do you think Bitcoin will ever reach $1 million?
I do.
But by when?
Time frame, I would say it's very difficult to say, but I think given the global fiat sort of currency regime, it's inevitable. It's really just a matter of when.
Yeah. So get that Bitcoin, especially in this market. No, not financial advice. I know you can't say this. Last question, right? Again, maybe people are listening to this kind of inspired by your journey, your story, right? Or maybe wants to study finance, right? And one day maybe become a CEO of an exchange or work in TradFi. What advice would you have for someone like that?
I would say, again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Just make sure that your path is something you're passionate about, because I don't believe you can excel at something unless you have true passion for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like we said, right, finding that passion is kind of, you got to be curious.
Right.
Stuff like that. Right. But man, what are you excited about for this year? Like, what's that one thing that you're like, I wake up one day and just really want to tackle?
What, in terms of work or just
I think life in general, work.
That's a good one, actually. Look, I mean, I'm excited for BitMart to really crush it this year. I think we, did a really good job in 2025 of accelerating growth. And I'm really looking forward to some of the new product launches that can hopefully elevate and get us to the next level. But I am very excited about also the show that we're going to be a part of, Crypto Nights. I think that will really, BitMart is one of the main sponsors behind it. And it will be on Amazon Prime.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Looking forward to watching you on Amazon Prime. Binge watch. What kind of show, like what kind of show is it? Is it just?
So it is a crypto Shark Tank like show.
Oh, like whale tank. What's it called? There was one, right?
Similar.
Okay.
Except this one will have elements of a reality TV show as well. So it will follow myself and several of the other judges around the global crypto conferences, just to show the average audience what the day in the life is like for a crypto market participant.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Looking forward to it. And again, really appreciate you being here. Appreciate the gift. And good luck with everything.
Oh, thank you for having me.